Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast. Today, I have got a very special guest. His name is Travis Dillard, and he helps busy business owners, CEOs, and executives transform their body so they can have more energy for their business, their customers, their spouse, partner, and get all the information they need to stay in shape and be sexy without spending hours in the gym. He's the author of Rise Up Champion, a compilation of 10 experts from around the globe who have mastered the 5 core areas of life and have taught millions of people how to do the same. Welcome, Travis Dillard.
Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you. Why don't we start with how you got started and what brought you on the show today? Yeah,
thanks, Rich. So, what got me started? It's a very general question, but here's why I'd like to start. I grew up very overweight, was in a position where I found that this is more of my story, right? Where I was in a place where I was insecure. I wasn't happy with who I was, the person that I had become. I was in a toxic relationship. I was doing a lot of drinking and a lot of other stuff I shouldn't have been doing. And, I made a decision one night when I felt my big clump of fat right over my leg when I was actually watching a television show, The Office. I'll never forget this moment. And I went up to my mirror and I said, you know what? Enough is enough. This is the moment. This is the time where it's time to do something about this. And long story short, from that day forward, I made a commitment to myself to exercise and pay attention to what I was eating. And there was a bunch of bumps in the road there. About 3 years later, I finally got to where I wanted to be. But it took me a long time. You name any diets, any programs from P90X to the paleo diet. I mean, I tried it all. And I had this passion because it took me so long and I was dedicated. I was driven. I'm like, man, if I'm this dedicated, what are other people doing? Because there's just so much out there. You know, quick fixes, the cleanses, you name it. And so what had happened is I said, you know what, I'm going to get into the world and I'm going to help people and I became a personal trainer.
Okay.
And so I was working in a gym setting, worked pretty much trading dollars for hours at that point. And because of that, I got to a burnout stage and I said, you know, I got to make a decision. It's either continue doing this or my health is going to suffer, which is ironic. So I decided to go to the online world. And I hired a coach, best decision I ever made. Coach, his name was AJ Mirzad. And because of that, I learned the tactics and the techniques to take everything online, the systems. And over the next 8 years, I developed systems just because I wanted my time. Because I got online to leverage my time. And when I realized okay, I can't be on phone calls every day. I was basically in a meeting or on the phone 8 hours a day. And I was like, okay, enough is enough. It's time to systematize this thing as much as I possibly could. So what I did was over the next years, I developed a system. And there's been tweaks and there's been changes. And this is where the story gets interesting. So about 4 years ago, I had a client who I was meeting in person with, and he was telling me about we were kind of reflecting a little bit. And he asked me a question. He said, what if your nutrition system was in an in-person facility, specifically gyms? And I thought, well, that's a very interesting idea. And at that very moment, I realized everything that I had done up until that point was for this reason. This is a way that I can leverage my time, but also to get the word out on a more grand scale. You know, scale my impact, so to speak. Be selfish there for a second. And so I did. I started working with gym owners. I was basically installing these nutrition systems inside of their facilities, and I absolutely loved it. I loved being in person, but everything shifted when a chiropractic friend came to me and said, you know, I know you've been working in gyms, but what if we put it in my facility? 2 weeks later, I kid you not, he now had a full system, but the most important thing was his referrals tripled, his retention was going up, and this is in a short matter of time. And I don't say this to gloat, I don't even say this to market this system, because quite frankly, you know, it's the idea alone of realizing, okay, how can I how can I, in my chiropractic business, begin to leverage my time, actually work on the business rather than in it, which is what he was doing. And what this did is it gave him a way to increase his recurring revenue, passive revenue, but also too, it was the gateway into him systematizing his entire business. And now today, this same guy who's locally, I'm actually here in the Woodlands, Texas, which is not too far outside of Houston. He literally doesn't even do anything in his business anymore. I mean, he doesn't show up. He's basically systematized his chiropractic therapy. He has massage therapy. It's everything, including his staff, but everything is systems, computer technology. And he doesn't even understand a thing about computers either. That's the crazier thing, which is funny in today's world, right? I mean, it's almost a necessity, but there are people out there who, whenever they're trying to do a post on Facebook, they get confused.
Yeah, I've asked people that in the quote unquote millennial generation, ask them to do a couple things on Facebook, share something on a timeline, and they'll scratch their head and say, okay, I'm not sure how to do that. And I thought, wait a minute, I thought everyone knows how to do that, but I guess not everybody. The more people I talk to, it can be challenging.
Exactly. And technology is a huge portion of, and you hear this all the time. People saying that, internet marketers do this. Say, you just automate your entire business. And the problem with it, with most of those ideas and even pretty much any coaching you can buy these days, they promise this freedom-based lifestyle and this recurring revenue. Problem is it ends up taking more time to implement it. It takes up more time to maintain it. And so you end up losing your time.
Let me ask you this, because you really piqued my interest. First of all, before I say too much, I want to say that, in terms of chiropractic care and what we offer, you meet chiropractors that are all over the board. Some of us are very much into, sports and athletics and the musculoskeletal side. Others have qualifications such as a DABC, which is more like an internist where they can, they spend a lot of time on nutrition and really have extra education about it and know a whole lot about it. But I can tell you for chiropractors such as myself who aren't that deep into nutrition, something like this sounds very appealing, a way to say, hey, someone else has already thought this through. This is a value add to my business. So I guess take me through it. Let's say I come to you and I say, hey, I've got this office. I've got this chiropractic practice. How can I integrate your offering into my business? Take me through the steps.
Yeah, great question, Rich. So the idea here is it's, and I'll start by saying that Jay Abraham, he's one of the most incredible marketers on the planet. He talks about 3 ways to grow your business. The first is from a chiropractor side is how do we get more patients in, which is where most chiropractors invest the majority of their time and energy. Secondly is how can we, or we can increase our prices, right, to bring in more revenue. And the third way to grow your business, and really what this system is focused on, is how can we make more per patient? And while doing that, increasing not only the long-term value of them, but their long-term wellness. So if you were to come to me and you said, let's just say you had 125 patients per week, which is pretty average from what I've seen over the last 4 years. The idea here is to focus in on, okay, how can we serve that patient to a higher level? Especially now, we're doing this podcast. It's January. It's early January. People right now are, the New Year's resolutioners. The idea here is to take the New Year's resolutioner and to shift their mindset. And how you do that is you start changing the way that they look at food. You change the way they look at food by simply pinpointing that food is not something that makes us gain weight. It's something that gives us energy. Though a lot of people use constraint. And so in order for me to even talk about the system and how it works from the business perspective, it's important that we understand how it works from a wellness perspective. So if you were to come to me and ask me, hey, Travis, what's the deal? Here's what happens is that I actually install systems into your existing facility where you don't have to know anything about nutrition. B, you don't have to know anything about technology. You literally hit a button and you're good to go.
So when you say systems, is it a method for doing things, or is it software? Does it take up physical space? A kiosk?
Great question. It is all software. So there's downloadable PDFs. There's a membership website that has videos. And here's the biggest thing about this, though. Membership websites as a whole, when you look at the internet space, membership websites, the compliance rate is like 2%. Very few people who purchase membership websites actually do anything with it at all. So where this differs is that because there's an accountability element to it, in other words, the doc is actually, so there's videos that are already prepared, but in some cases, docs want to do the videos themselves, which it doesn't take any time because there's templates and things like that. But anyway, the point is that there's an accountability element where as soon as they come into the program, the doc is with them throughout the entire process without actually having to be there with them. They can and clone themselves. And so from a retention standpoint, that's why, and Rich, by the way, I am not here to sell this by any means, but you're bringing me to it.
Well,
I'm passionate about it.
My curiosity. So.
Yeah, I'm passionate about it. Once you get me started, I can't stop. But anyway, the retention is 8 to 12 months, which is unheard of. And what I mean by retention is when the patient comes in, the average time that they are within the program is 8 to 12 months. What I see most docs doing is those who do go down the nutrition route, what they'll do is they'll put an extremely high, they'll make it high end. They'll make it, $1,200 for 12 weeks or 8 weeks. And the reason they do that is because the client gets results, like they lose 20 pounds, and this is best case scenario. And then they think, well, why would they continue? There's no reason for them to continue. And it's because nothing was actually changed. Their mentality wasn't changed. It's still a quick fix. It's like, okay, how can I lose the next 20 pounds? Then they gain it back. Okay, now what? Cleanse. What program can I buy now? And it's just like this never-ending roller coaster has got to end. And now, I don't want to really get going on this, but we can thank the medical industry for this, the pharmaceutical industry, and as a whole, and which then brought down into the supplements of the weight loss supplements, the powders, the pills. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it's time that the world actually see this. And the best way that I've seen to do this is through chiropractic, because chiropractic truly believes in wellness. They understand inflammation. That's where chiropractic therapy plays a role. And then the deep-seated issue of inflammation is actually what they're putting into their bodies. And then there's also, you've got massage therapy, orthotics. There's a ton of other different roads you can go down. And I see a lot of the docs I talk to, I'd say 30 out of the last 40 I've spoken to have some sort of other offering like massage therapy or orthotics or whatever. But how we look at it is this. It's through the ascension model. Okay, so here's where I see a lot of chiropractors going wrong, is that they'll have another portion, they'll have another offering. Well, for this case, since it makes sense, we'll talk about nutrition. If you had another offering for nutrition, they look at it like two completely different businesses. So let's say we've got nutrition over here, and we've got chiropractic therapy here. Now, the problem with actually treating them as two separate businesses, although they think that this is a good way to do it because they think, we're going to bring him into the office to get him in on the nutrition side because people know what nutrition is and they're more likely to come in for that reason. That is wrong. That's incorrect. Because if we think of it like this, for every time that we've heard, chiropractors are nuts, for every example that you hear like that, I can tell you the same example in the fitness industry where somebody else is selling snake oil. Bunch of quacks.
Really?
Oh, it's especially now. Businesses today are built off of quick fixes. And because of that, just like in the chiropractic space, if you are in a business right now where you are bringing clients in and they're having 3-minute adjustments and they're leaving, it's a house of cards. That could 10 years ago. You saw guys who were living the dream, flying the jets, driving the nice cars, and they would have 3-minute sessions and they would have 1,000 patients per week. It could work back then, but now we are living in a world of enlightenment where people are waking up and they're questioning, I'm seeing all the BS advertisements on the health side. I'm seeing all this junk that people are trying to make me buy, and they're buying it. It's not working, and now they're questioning. So getting back to the model. So most chiropractors, again, they look at two different businesses, nutrition and chiropractic. Now let's merge the two together and say that they're one business and use the ascension model. So instead, now you already have an established and developed business for the chiropractic side. If you were to take the nutrition side and say, all right, I'm just going to develop this other business completely separate, it takes typically $30,000 just in advertising investment just to get the word out about a new product or a new service. Instead, take what you're doing right now on the chiropractic therapy side, and much like you see dentists do, they bring someone in for cleaning, right? That's why you go in. They notice a cavity. The natural progression, the organic progression is to get your cavity fixed. You wake up one day and you see your teeth are yellow. Okay, teeth whitening, so on and so forth. It's the same thing. Someone comes in for chiropractic therapy. They are experiencing some value in by actually not being in pain. Maybe it's not so immediate, but it's taken a few sessions, and then they bring up the question, or most people need a little push, and maybe their nutrition isn't on point. Maybe there's an opportunity for them. Maybe it's a simple ask. Because in most cases, people are looking, 33% of the market is always, 33% of the market within your local market is willing and able to trust you. And if you can immediately build that trust, they're going to follow whatever advice you give them. Because they recognize that you're actually here to help. Now, let's be realistic here. 33% of the market is on the fence. They definitely need a push in the right direction. But again, sometimes it's simply just making sure that people are aware that you have this offering. And then the other 33%, well, that's a market that will never buy from you. And I'm speaking in generalities here, of course, but we recognize that not everyone is a buyer, not everyone is a prospect. So I hope that explained it a little bit. But the ascension model is, I see people trying to avoid this model because they feel like that it's easier to bring people in for massage therapy or nutrition, much easier than it would be for chiropractic therapy. I've seen it bomb so many times, I can't even tell you.
Well, I'll tell you, from the way that I practice, and of course we are all, different in how we practice, I really integrate at least some recommendations into my recommendations for a patient, a care plan. If they need to decrease their BMI, I mention that. If they need to be more active, I mention that. If they need to get more water, more rest, whatever it is. And I think, like I said earlier, I don't specialize in nutrition, but I do include that because holistically you have to talk about it. If someone comes in and says, hey, doc, I weigh 300 pounds. Can you cure my ankle and knee pain? The answer is, well, I can only do so much, but let's talk about what may be causing that ankle and knee pain. And that leads you, naturally into that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the population in general, because of the internet and other things, just knows so much more now about what they should be putting in their body and the adverse effects of the bad things that they've been eating and maybe didn't know about. So I think the time is right for that. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is the value add part of it. I think, times have changed, and all of us, I think, in no matter what business we are, need to be adding something of value to what it is that we bring to the table. Certainly, someone come in and just getting adjusted and walking up to the front counter, those days you can do it that way. But I think people are demanding more, and you have to be able to deliver that. So I think that's what you've described here is a great sort of segue into that. For us who maybe don't have the time or haven't thought about how to really formally do this. So I want to ask you, let's say I get this going. So it sounds like I want to make sure just to recap what you're doing. So you've got PDFs for the patients, some videos. It's a software that goes onto their computer, I guess. So are there supplements or anything like that? And the second question is it all just food recommendations? I know you mentioned that. Is it food and exercise? What are we talking about in terms of what we're telling and informing the patient?
Excellent. So it's based, there's a lot of different components here. But when it comes to supplements, it steers away from supplements, and that's conditional. And I'll get to that in a second. But the reason that it's conditional, quite frankly, is that we can get all of our nutrients from food. Now, a lot of us don't know this because we've been told that we have to buy vitamin D, we have to buy these other supplements. Now, that's not to say that there are supplements out there that can literally supplement the process. And what I see is there's a lot of docs who they've come up with their proprietary blends. And quite frankly, I am not one to talk good about supplements, but most of the offices that I go into, the supplements that they are selling, because a lot of them are very high quality. There's nothing processed. It's all natural. And if that's the case, then what we do is we integrate that if it makes sense. So then there's a way to sell their supplements as well. Now, in terms of what the nutrition is actually doing or how it makes sense on a micro level, it's all about decreasing the central nervous system load. And what that means really is that we're trying to take away stress. We're not only giving them the foods, but we're showing them and we're teaching them why processed foods, most things out of a bag only create more stress for ourselves, because our central nervous system becomes hyperactive, and then all of a sudden we're tired. And that's why I see this a lot with business owners just in general. It's why adrenal fatigue is a big thing that very few doctors ever talk about. Food has a lot to do with the way our adrenals react. And so with that in mind, if we can start to understand not only how whole foods affect us, but if we can actually learn throughout the process how these foods, when we wake up in the morning, how we feel, and if we can tie that to the food, and then also know vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, like these questions come up because sometimes we have these deficiencies that we find out, whatever it may look like, and we don't know what foods that help that specific deficiency. So what do? We go grab, a vitamin D, which, over time, it's not immediately toxic, but you take that for a long enough period of time. Most of that stuff is not natural. It's synthesized in a lab. And so our body can't even process it as vitamin D. It just becomes toxic. And this is why, actually, what I didn't mention through my own health and fitness journey, I was at a point where look, again, I said I tried everything and I mean it. I was taking all these different supplements from GNC or a nutrition shop. And I got to the point one day where I went into my, I actually saw a chiropractor at this time who did the natural medicine route where he took some tests. And he said my adrenals were firing off the radar. And it was because I was putting all this stuff in my body, which I thought was helping. I thought was helping me lose weight. It wasn't. It actually caused me to gain weight because my body was so inflamed. It was just trying to recover. It couldn't invest any of its resources into, gaining any sort of muscle or losing any fat because it was just trying to survive. And that's where a lot of people are, unfortunately.
So looking at what you've talked about so far, a membership program for patients, what is the cost to a patient for something like this?
Well, typically docs will charge $97 a month, and they'll lump it in to a 3-month. And this isn't every doctor, but they'll lump it into a 3-month package. So we're looking at about a $300 price point. But again, because we're looking at the long-term value and adding value to the client or to the patient, the retention is high. So it's an easier barrier, or it's a lower barrier to entry for anybody. Where you could also go with that is that if you have other services, there's also ways that you can package it in, right? Because some people, like I said, they want the whole thing. They want all the value. So you package together some 12 chiropractic therapy sessions, massage therapy, and nutrition all into one. And that's one thing we look at. We look at the offerings because a lot of people, their packaging is off. I mean, and what's interesting, and this is a whole nother road, there's some chiropractors that I work with that have membership fees. So they don't deal with insurance at all. So they'll have, I've got one guy out of Connecticut, one doc out of Connecticut who charges $100 a month for his patients. He's got He's got right now 300 patients total. So he just started. But he completely got away from insurance. It's a purely cash-based business. And so there's opportunities to, when they first come in as part of the membership, they can tack on an additional fee for their nutrition services. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you're right. And there are so many different models out there, and I think people's offerings do need to be tweaked a little bit. So it's great that you come in. It sounds like you offer some advice on how to set that up and maybe package things in a way that's going to help their patients the most.
And you got to sell it. You got to know how to sell it.
So I guess that leads me into the next question is the marketing aspect. You said, it's not a great idea to just target it as a weight loss thing specifically. How can we integrate this in terms of, well, I know how to integrate it on the patient side, but how do we get the word out about this?
Very good question. So the answer is it depends, and I know you're not going to like that answer, but it depends on your current, how many patients you currently have in your database, or I should say how many active patients you have. Because the biggest thing right off the bat is using an ascension model, and once they are in the office, then there are ways to market it within your office, to get the word out within your office. That's where we start. Now, if you have a health and fitness background or you're interested in nutrition, there are other ways to do this as well, in terms of you can get out and you can set up, and this is what I've done for some, is that we've actually set up, we've gone locally, because I actually go out there and meet with them, and we'll set up a little organization within their office where weekly people will come in and they'll have nutrition talks. But again, that's why it said it depends, because it depends on if you're a nutrition guru or if you like nutrition, and if you don't, that's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to know anything about nutrition. And there was one more thing I wanted to add there, but we'll get back to it. I'll hit it in a second. All
right. Well, let me ask you this. So you mentioned earlier that people have increased their patient visits or number of new patients. Can you share with us some case studies, some of the chiropractors you've worked with, and some of the results that you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. So, chiropractor out of Philadelphia, Seth Barfield is his name. He's got a chiropractic facility who they cater more on the sports medicine side. They deal with primarily sports injuries, and that's their niche. And this was about 2 years ago when he came to me, and he was focusing, like I said before, on Jay Abraham's number one way to grow your business, and that is how can I get more patients in the door. And he was having some success right off the bat, but he had plateaued and he was frustrated. So I came in, I flew out there, and we implemented this system. And he, at that time, had about 200 patients per week. And within, I believe it was about a month and a half. Don't quote me on that. Maybe 2 months. Yeah, 2 months. We'll go with 2 months. He was generating $4,500 in recurring revenue within 2 months, because he took advantage of the gold that was already sitting right now in his facility. Now, not only that, but when you look at the real value of the program is now having an offering that, like we talked about before, most people don't, if they have nutrition within their office, it's typically they'll hand them a pamphlet or they'll give them some advice, and it ends up being, that armchair advice that they go home and it was exciting and they heard you say it, but the chances are compliance is low. It's just the reality. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. I want to get to the part that I think is probably on everyone's mind who is listening right now. If it's $97 per month to the patient, what is the payout amount to the doctor? What is their cut of that for implementing this program?
So $97 is what they charge to their patients. So that's full profit. That's
straight into the chiropractor's pocket?
Correct. So let me just back up here. I better make myself clear. So once the system is in the chiropractor's office, within 5 days that it's in there, they can literally start offering it to their current patients. Their patient comes in, Sally comes in, locks them in at $97 a month. Again, it's typically they'll typically lock them in at 3 months at $300. That $300 is now in the doctor's pocket.
So what part am I missing? Is there a cost to the doctor to get this going?
Yes. There's an upfront fee.
Okay.
And that can differ. It differs based off of current size. There's a lot at play here.
Gotcha. So it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of a proposition.
Correct.
Well, I want to shift gears here away from this particular service that you're talking about and that we've been talking about. I want to talk a little bit about you as an entrepreneur. You've got this business and you've got some other businesses that you've been involved in. Before we move away too far from this one, what is exciting you most about this particular business?
This one that we were just talking about?
Yeah.
Here's what really excites me, and I love this question. For the last 10 years, I'd say the last 8 years, because I was in the online world, the contribution that I was making was big. Don't get me wrong, 19,000 pounds, over 900 clients. But there was an element that was missing. Actually, two elements. The first element was I never got down and dirty and fully immersed with the client. And I realized that for me, where I'm best, where I'm strongest is in person. And a lot of people will agree with that. Though, if I'm very extroverted, and I've recognized that, and because of that, I realize I love being out immersed with the people. I like going through the business. I like, just talking through everything, making sure everyone's on board. The whole team, you've got, typically it's, depending on the size of the chiropractor, I've had offices where there's 10 staff and they, for the day we meet around and it's just, that to me is the most fulfilling thing I can do. And that's what I was meant to do. And until this business, I didn't realize that. And the second thing is, and I'm just going to be completely frank with you, I absolutely love working with chiropractors. I really do. And the reason being is because they understand they're in it for the right reasons. Now, I'm speaking in generalities. There always are those people who aren't, but the people that I attract, at least, are in it for the right reasons. And because of that, I realize that the system that I have can make an impact leveraged and at scale. And I know that it's in the hands of the right people.
Well, in total, how many businesses do you own right now?
I own 2 businesses right now.
Okay. And the other one is a fitness business. Am I getting that correct?
Yes. And this one's more of taking a side road. I should say it's more of an ancillary business. Most of my focus right now is working with chiropractors. Again, like I said before, I owned a health and fitness business for about 8 years, still own it. And I've got a few clients on that side. I've actually got about 15 on that side, but I've actually shut down taking new clients over the last 2 years. I've had clients who have been with me now some 5-6 years. So that business is still there, and occasionally I'll bring on a referral, but it's highly unlikely.
Well, if you could go back in time to when you started your first business, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Systems. Here's what I would do. Here's the exact advice that I would give to my younger self. I would say, for every 15 minutes that I'm doing work, stop and write down all the menial tasks. So if for instance, if I'm sitting there and I've got, a spreadsheet pulled up for accounting, or I've got or if I'm reaching out to local businesses looking to network, these are all things that can be outsourced. If I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be look for things that you can outsource today. Because time is the biggest asset, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that advice. I mean, time is currency. And when you look at it that way, if you can pay someone, value your time really high and pay someone a lesser amount to do the same thing, you've leveraged your ability to get things done. And yeah, absolutely, that's great advice.
Love that question, by the way.
Well, I want to shift gears again. I want to talk a little bit, and you may have touched on some of this earlier with, what you said when you were sitting there and not happy with your body, but you've had some success in life, and you learn a lot from those, but we tend to learn even more from our failures. So do you have an obstacle or a challenge or something you've overcome? And if it's the fitness thing, we can move on. If there's something else, let us know what that event was, how you overcame it, and some of the lessons you learned.
Ooh. We've learned a lot of lessons throughout this journey, don't we?
You better believe it.
Yeah, I've got a great one. It dealt with a partnership early on, and something that I learned very early on is that partnerships are not. If you're looking for a partnership to save you, maybe you're in a huge financial rut right now. And you're thinking, okay, maybe if I can just have that peace of mind to have someone here with me in terms of a partner, someone co-running a business with you, and you're looking and you're actively pursuing, be careful. Because and this is what I learned, how a good partnership, how a solid partnership is formed is by first creating a relationship. And then if it makes sense, at that point, after you've built a relationship, you get to know the person, you get to know their quirks. It's like marriage.
I was thinking the same thing.
It really is. It really is. It's like, you go to a bar, you meet somebody, you're asking them questions, trying to figure out who they are. You start to form a bond, and then, 2 years down the road, after that bond is concrete, then it makes sense to, okay, well, I want to be together for the rest of my life. Let's do this, right? It's the same thing with business. We should be looking at it like that. It's crazy to think about, but if we don't, then what happened to me will happen to you. And I realized when I got into a partnership for the wrong reasons, because I was looking for someone to save me. This specific one was about 8 years ago. I've done many partnerships, some successful, some not, but if you take this, you listen to anything that I've said today, take this. If you find a partner, be sure that you've created a relationship, a foundation first, because once you're in it and the investments are being thrown around and decisions are being made and you find out you don't click with that person, every single morning you wake up, you're going to ask yourself, what am I doing? You're going to feel the tension. You're going to feel reactive, like you've lost control of the day before it's ever even started. So it comes down to confidence in yourself that you can do it, that you are capable of doing this. Now, everybody requires support. Everybody requires support. Coaches, mentors, find somebody who can help you, because otherwise you're just out in the middle of the ocean trying to find a life jacket and you're just wading around, and you'll wade and wade and wade. Now, one side note to that, what I see a lot in the chiropractic industry specifically is that and you can probably agree with me, Rich, is that if you're looking for somebody, people who are just graduating school and they just got their license, they're now, in debt, and they're looking for help, they've just started their own practice, they typically reach out to someone who's in their 50s or 60s. But the way that they did business is completely different than what we do now. For instance, we were joking about Facebook and technology and things like that. The entire market has shifted. So when they're looking for these guys who are, on the golf course, they've retired, they've sold their business, and they're doing that same thing. They're giving armchair advice. And unfortunately, this is why you can look at this across all industries. This is why most businesses don't survive, is because people get stuck with the wrong help. And I know that sounds like, okay, well, duh. Though it happens, because when we're in that place of we're not sure what direction to go in, we just need help, we almost become desperate.
Yeah, and one of my professors is known for saying, you don't know what you don't know. And when you're first starting out, you honestly don't know. You may not know that you're talking to the wrong people, but definitely look at someone who's got more of a cutting edge, finger on the pulse experience, rather than the guy who's maybe 10 or 20 years removed from what it took to get a business launched, because the whole business starting phase, as you know, is different than the maintaining and growth phase.
Very much so.
You don't want to make a critical decision early on that could jeopardize, that launch during those tender years, I guess.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, let me ask you this. When it comes to success, who are your heroes?
My number one hero is my grandmother. Very different than probably the head gurus out there or anything like that. My grandmother is everything to me. She is, next to my wife, the closest person to me. She has been there with me over the last 10 years. She has experienced some of the pitfalls and the wins and everything in between, and been there for me daily. And because of that, I always find this interesting. People who have gone through a lot know the most, and are actually, when we're looking for someone who's wise and someone to look up to, it's always the people who have had the lowest of lows that can genuinely empathize with anybody.
Well, I love that answer. Yeah, I do get a lot of the bigger, the Tony Robbins and things like that. I think those are great heroes, but, a family member, a grandparent, somebody like that is a special meaning, and we learn so many important life lessons early on from those folks. So I talked to a lot of people in this podcast, and just about every successful person does things. You mentioned systems early. They do things in a way. They have daily rituals and habits that help center them, affirmations, things like that. Is there anything you do on a daily basis to help keep your eye on the target?
The biggest thing I do to start out every single morning is I chug 16 ounces of water, and I am obsessively drinking water. Here's what's interesting, is that in most cases where we ask ourselves when we're feeling reactive or we feel like we've lost control, most cases we find that we're dehydrated. Taking deep breaths, in other words, chugging water. If you chug water right now, in fact, if you are listening to this and you have water beside you right now, chug for 5 seconds and tell me how you feel afterwards. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and you immediately reach this instant calm state. So every single morning, I prime my body to crave water by instantly drinking it the moment I wake up. Because what happens is we have what's called a thirst signal. And you might find that if you don't drink water, 3 hours, you go through your morning rituals, your morning routine, you're getting into work, and you realize oh my gosh, I haven't had any water and I'm not really thirsty. What's going on here? Well, it's because our thirst signal isn't activated. We have to actually activate it, and then the only way you're going to do that is by coating your spine in water. Chugging 16 ounces of water, if it's your first time, 8 ounces is good too. But to chug water, it activates that signal. So later throughout the day, as you move through your morning and go through the afternoon, your body is going to actually crave water. So that's why you see people who have, it looks like that they've always got a glass of water with them. And they almost get kind of uncomfortable when they don't. I am one of those people. And that's the exact reason.
Well, we're getting near the end of this interview. Unfortunately, our time together is drawing to a close, but I do have a few final thoughts before you go. Do you have a favorite book that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
I do. It's called The War of Art, often confused with The Art of War. It's by an author, Stephen Pressfield. In it, he talks about resistance. And most of us have two lives, the life that we live and the unlived life within us. And between the two stands resistance. And it's our ability to overcome this resistance that separates us from the rest. Best book I've ever read, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. Pick it up. I'm serious.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people talk about that book, and it's definitely on my must-read list. So we will link to that book in our show notes. And everything else we talked about, those will be in the show notes as well. What is the best business advice you have ever received?
Wow. There's a lot. The best business advice. Yeah. Honestly, the best piece of business advice was personal. And that was, my business starts with my relationship with my wife. And any time that things seem on the rocks or we're in a fight, I always notice how it impacts the way I think, the decisions I make, and my business as a whole. And so the best piece of advice was, I'll never forget, it was from a mentor. His name's Alex Sharfin. He told me, we were diving into the business. He said, all right, first thing, how's your relationship with your wife? I said, what? We're here to talk about business. and he said, notice, just pay attention to how you feel in your relationship with your wife, the love that you feel, and if everything's going smoothly, and how that impacts the other areas of your life. And I did, and let me tell you right now, I realized that my lifestyle is around, my business is around my lifestyle, not the other way around. Because we get so focused, so just driven and hungry for more financially from an impact perspective that it can create this hyper focus that takes away from other areas of our life. The areas that mean the most, our health and relationships. So it's all about developing the business around the lifestyle, not the lifestyle around the business.
Great advice. Love it. Well, look, Travis, I appreciate you being on the show. I'm so glad that we have connected, and I really love what you're doing, and I think it would be a great benefit for chiropractors to check out the service you provide and maybe think about integrating it into their practices. What's the best way for people to reach you and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me is go to perform-nutrition.com/register. And that's going to be a 30-minute video. It's going to be a little bit more about me and the system itself, but really it's about bringing wellness to the chiropractic industry. And so if you're looking to connect with me, again, go to perform-nutrition.com/register, and I will connect with you directly from there.
Well, thank you again, Travis. I really appreciate what you are doing and the service you are providing, the value add you are providing to chiropractors. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.